So if everybody is ready, thank you all for coming out to the Final Fantasy panel. We're going to be talking about the final and the fantasy and everything in between.
There's something in between?
Lots of things. There's lots of Final Fantasy games that aren't named Final Fantasy. It's kind of weird that way. But anyway, I am Zenith Will Rule. I do a show called Final Fantasy Retrospective on the YouTubes. I also do History of One Piece. You may have heard of it. And to my left, this is my good friend Ray. Ray, what's going on?
Oh, not too much. Hi, my name is Raymundo. Actually, you can call me Mundo. I have been...
Cool. No mics for anyone.
Yeah, I don't do anything on YouTube, but I have been behind the scenes for this guy for a little while. You know, I've cameoed in a couple of his videos. I do have a little bit of a surprise. I will be giving out, I have 2 loot crates from this month. At the end of the panel, we will be asking a couple of questions based on Final Fantasy. The crates are not Final Fantasy themed, but that's okay, it's still cool.
They are the final crates, though. The final crates we have.
Yes, they are the last 2.
I have puns for days. It annoys people, I know. I don't care.
And are you done your introduction, I guess? I wasn't sure you were finished, so.
Yeah, I'm done.
Alright, my name's Adam, aka CS Radical. I'm usually an anime and game blogger. I also do a little bit of YouTube now. Was on and off, but most of my focus is on the more eccentric and the fun side of anime and games rather than the super serious side. So there's going to be a lot of Riku talk in this panel if I'm allowed to.
Oh, we can talk about anything. I mean, everybody's about to go home anyway, so if we get in trouble...
Out the door and gone.
So why don't you start us off? Where would you want to start today? Because there's so much to talk about.
I mean...
I will just start with, what is Final Fantasy to you?
What is Final Fantasy to you?
Well, I have to like put a bridging question there. Are we talking like... do I get to piece this? Because I could tell you what Final Fantasy used to be for me compared to now, where it's a whole different story.
Let's do a little bit of both, because
okay.
Final Fantasy used to be many things, and it has changed many, many times.
It has, because, I mean, I grew up playing the original Super Nintendo ones, so 2 and 3 before they got the 4 and 6 treatment, because Japan apparently we weren't deserving of like 3 games for some strange reason. So that I grew up with just in the old school JRPG, and I wasn't like too big on those. So when those games came into my my house, I literally, like, I can remember, because, you know, save points were a pain in the ass back then. I would literally just have my Super Nintendo and my television on for like 8 hours as I went to sleep, because I'm like, I know that save point is like 30 minutes away. I'm going to pass out. This is not going to work. And then after that, I completely bypassed PlayStation because we didn't have enough money to afford both, so it was N64 for a while, and Nintendo didn't keep them because they suck. So I went all the way to 10, and after 10, that's when I get to the second half. Because, I mean, I remember the old school games, especially 4 and 6, 7, 8, and 9, not really 8 as much, but those games definitely had a much more of a story base. They were much more, I think, fun. And then I found with 12, and especially 13, it started going into more of a, I guess in a sense of they forgot what brought them to the dance in the first place.
How much external materials can we get you to read? We're going to go into the menu to learn what a LaC is, because I have no idea what that is.
At least they were nice to give us a short video, like, or at least audio thing in 13.2 to be like, this is all that thing that you didn't play because we know you probably didn't finish 13.
See, 13.2 was actually so much an improvement, but the problem was the damage had been done. And having beaten and platinumed 13,
that's dedication.
yeah, I beat that game twice.
Real dedication. Good God.
And I hated every second, but yeah. But go on.
Oh no, like, I think the thing with 13.2 that at least brought me somewhat back into it, because I was already like JRPG out at that point, because if anybody remembers, like the tail end of PlayStation 2, unless you were playing Persona, it was just garbage anime game after garbage anime game over and over, because you get like all the Atelier Iris games, which were almost like visual novels. You were getting like the Magna Cartas, which were just terrible games. So by the time that 13 and 13.2 came out, like I was so out of it. But at least 13.2 was kind of at least a little bit happier, and with Lightning not being around for most of it, I wasn't like wanting to punch something for the entire game. That was nice.
Yeah, I definitely liked her sister a lot more than Lightning.
Although the weirdness of the Mass Effect DLC costumes, that's I still can't get past that.
All of the DLC costumes, just in general, I'm like, I'm not gonna pay for another skin, but like, okay. Ray, what about you? What is Final Fantasy to you? Then, now, always.
Final Fantasy to me is a blessing, and it's a curse. It's all of these
Are you
things.
Spider-Man?
True. How am I Spider-Man?
Well, I was referencing the movies, Ray.
Was I referencing the movies?
No, inadvertently you were.
No, like, because there were a lot of, there were so many, like, there's so many bad games in the series and so many good ones as well at the same time, and it's just, there's way too much, it's overwhelming. But all I can say is that Final Fantasy to me has been, like, my childhood. It went through a lot of rough patches. It's been through a lot. We've all been through a lot as a fanhood. It's just
Dirge of Cerberus.
Oh my god.
We've been through worse.
Not bad.
yeah, I skipped it too.
Final Fantasy to me, yes, Crisis Core is highly underrated. Final Fantasy to me has always been something like the Tales of series, which does not get enough love over here. It's a game franchise that is constantly changing with every single iteration because we rarely have the direct sequel. And so when they create these games, you very rarely get references to previous games, and they change the formula. In some cases, like the evens and the odds are somewhat similar in ideas that they put forth. I found like 1 and 3 and 2 and 4 are very similar in how they approached it, which makes me think that they had very different ideas, and they were just like, you know what, let's cater to certain fans of this game and certain fans of this game. But what I liked about Final Fantasy is that you always have something new. You can't really complain about it being stale because every single game is kind of different, especially when you get to the 3D era of the franchise. So, to me, it's just something that I can try. Not always going to be good, but it's an experiment, and sometimes it works out well.
The only other thing I can think of is, I think most of us are probably in this camp. Final Fantasy to us is over 1,000 hours of gameplay in total.
I would believe it's more like over 9,000 hours.
That might be pushing.
Maybe minutes, years.
I don't know. I put in a lot of time.
Well, you're the one that wanted to Platinum 13. That's you.
I also Platinum 13 too, so that shows where my time goes.
All the wrong places.
But let's move over to favorite Final Fantasy games, because there are some bad ones, yes, but what are the ones that we remember the most fondly? Starting with you, Ray.
Well, Final Fantasy IX will always hold that special place in my heart. It was my first Final Fantasy. It was, I believe, the most ahead of its time. It was, I believe, very visually appealing. The story was very well done. The dialogue was well done. It was easy to follow. The characters were fantastic. I love the music. I know how to play the theme song on my guitar. I've played it many times, and it's a fantastic game. So that is my favorite Final Fantasy, and it's one of the few that actually, one of my favorite games of all time, in fact. And
it's such a shame that like a lot of people really don't talk about it.
It's a highly overlooked game.
It's almost like the bastard child to people.
The problem is, Final Fantasy IX came out at a time where Final Fantasy was just becoming mainstream. And Final Fantasy VII and Final Fantasy VIII were the ones that people knew. Final Fantasy IX is all about the past games in the franchise. It references every single major idea of the series. Garland is one of the main antagonists. So if you do not know these references, you don't realize, okay, how important this is to the series. And so it is my favorite game in the franchise, but mostly because after playing most of the games in the series, going back and seeing exactly what they were trying to do with it, I'm like, this game is the equivalence of every Final Fantasy. It is the ultimate Final Fantasy at that point in time. And I fully support Jim Sterling in his belief that is the best Final Fantasy. So, that's me.
Well, you do have to thank God for him, so he kind of does have a bit of
thank
a
God for Jim Sterling. And what about you? What is your favorite Final Fantasy?
It's tough because, well, I know what the answer is. The problem is I can't even openly say that it's the best one either, because it's like best and favorite to me are two kind of different aspects. My personal favorite though is easily 10, just because that cast of characters was the ones that I definitely like flew to the most. Because I mean, 6 is I think is the best game, but when you don't have voice acting and also the graphics back then were it's obviously 16-bit, it's a lot harder to visualize things a lot easier. Whereas with 10, that was when, you know, the graphics really started to get, like, that's when Final Fantasy really got itself into what is now more like the good 3D age. Because 7, 8, and 9, they don't age nearly as well, unless you're counting the cutscenes. They really do not age that well as games. So with 10, at least, especially with voice acting being a major part of it too, there's a lot extra character in it that most Final Fantasies never had before. Especially when you have characters like Auron, who, Auron and Lulu are like some of the most complex characters I've seen, because, like, if you just look at them straight on, they might seem just like the emo brooding characters, but they actually have a lot of depth to them, especially when you learn who Auron really is, and why he's helping Titus throughout his journey. And so a lot of it is, you really can't take these characters at face value. You could back in the previous Final Fantasies, because back from like Final Fantasy 1 to 3, you were classes, you weren't characters. So over the years, it's evolved to incorporate that. Yeah, and I mean the thing is too, like, Lulu is a great example too, because for my first like few playthroughs, I hated her. And like the longer and longer I've gone on, because this game's been out like what, like almost 15? It came out in 2000, I believe. Yeah, so it's definitely like, it's 2001. So it is 15 years now.
Yeah,
yes.
15
so like
anniversary recently.
So I mean, like now, like 15 years later, I can replay the game now, and I'm like, and I actually understand what I'm looking at now, because I mean, obviously, when you're 13 years old, one character's going to look a hell of a lot different than when you're 28 and understanding what's actually in front of you now.
Yes.
But I mean, it's Riku. Tara Strong just doesn't do me wrong when it comes to voice acting.
Tara Strong is one of the few voice actresses that every single performance she has ever done, I'm a huge fan of. And I can say wholeheartedly that Tara Strong must continue to do more voice work, because she's fantastic.
She's in everything.
She is in everything.
And she can go wide vocal range from deep voices to little girly voices.
I will project, because this microphone thing isn't working.
That's what I'm thinking too. It's really quiet as well.
There's also not that many people in here, so it's not that hard.
Can everyone hear me?
Yes.
Yeah.
Okay, good.
Yeah. No, we're loud as crap.
That's cool.
So do we go opposite and be like, what's the black mark?
Yeah. What is the low point? Not counting Spirits Within, because that's a movie.
I would love to count Spirits Within, but for making that rule.
Once the next movie comes out, I think we can rank the movies. But at this point, we have one crap and one really rather good, not perfect. But
you definitely need to play the game before you watch the movie.
It's a fan.
And even then, it's like the bar was so low the first time you could literally have tiptoed over it.
Yeah, you kind of need to play the game before you watch the movie, or you won't know what the hell's going on.
I just like the pretty fighting, you know.
Yeah, it's pretty cool.
Yeah. But yeah, low mark. Starting with you, Ray. What do you think was the black sheep of the franchise?
I mean, honestly, The only thing that would come anywhere close to the black sheep would have to be Final Fantasy VIII. Not because I disliked the game exactly. I mean, I didn't hate the game, but I didn't like the game.
It's called micromanagement, the game.
Yeah, I did not like the draw system at all.
Yeah,
Right.
Nerf City.
It's shit, but it's my
Like,
favorite.
It's highly exploitable, and it's also very complex unless you look at it and you're like, it's very simple.
Like, I mean, the fact that I literally just had to sit in an area and just constantly, like, redo Ultima because I'm like, look, I need something that works here.
It was one of the most confusing things to me starting out with 8, because I had no idea where to go or what to do, and you have to go through, like, school, and I don't like school, especially back then, and so I'm just like, no, I don't want to go through this school thing. Until Persona happened, and Persona made school fun, but go on, Ray.
Persona making school great again.
Yeah, but I didn't actually get very far in 8 because at one point I gave up. I couldn't get myself into it. But other than that, like, I didn't really play a bad Final Fantasy game. Like, I didn't play all of them, so I probably just skipped over the ones I didn't think I would like anyway, so.
I know there are some really bad ones that people have played, but my black sheep is Final Fantasy XII. This was at the peak of my Final Fantasy, like, years, where I had played 9, I had played 10. I skipped over 11 because I wasn't an MMO person, but, like, I was still a huge fan of the franchise.
Especially if you, like, didn't have friends, it was the most infuriating game you could ever play.
Oh, yeah.
Like, it was so dependent on having people to play with.
I was so excited. I pre-ordered the game. I had the special edition. Before I played the game, I watched all the special features detailing the history of Final Fantasy.
That DVD was awesome.
And I was just like, I was so pumped because, like, I was starting to collect the previous games. I hadn't played them, but I was just like, you know, I wanted to learn more and more and more. And I started to play 12, and I'm like, why is this so boring? Why is Vaughn in this game? Like, because for those of you who don't know, Vaughn was a last-minute addition to the game. It was supposed to be about Bosch, which is why everything in the game revolves around Bosch. But he's not the main character, because they said, oh no, we need a younger kid to bring in the new audience. And yet they didn't have a story based on this person, so he's the main character. I'm going to be the Sky Pirate of Dalmasca, but
with nothing to do.
Nothing to do in the entire, like, nothing that he does matters to the plot.
I always just considered him the observer of Bosch.
Like, you would have thought after 10 they would have learned that since people loved Orin so much that we weren't going to have a problem with an older main character at this point. But they're just like, no, it's got to be teenager. Japan
the problem
wants
is
teenagers.
Japan wants younger characters. Yeah. Part of the reason Zero Escape did not sell in Japan is that they thought 999 characters were all too old. And I'm like, they're like 17. How is that too old?
No, they
It's
gotta
not
be
junior
12.
high.
Like Sora.
They gotta be cute, apparently. But 12 infuriated me in so many ways. Like, the battle system played itself, and when I tried to play, it was just like a lot of busy work, especially the gambit system. 13, say what you will about 13, but at least the battle system didn't quite play itself as much as 12.
So it's funny that you say that, because we are going through my bottom 3. 8, I finished, but didn't like. 12, I would think I might have been like 10 hours away from the end. And I remember putting it down because I was like spending a lot of the time doing the hunting side quests. And then I finally finished and just went, wait, what the hell is the story again? And I completely like blanked on what the hell I was fighting for. So I'm like, well, I guess there's no point in finishing this. But I never made more than 30 hours in 13, which is why it's easily my worst. I could not even get remotely close. Somebody literally told me, look, it gets good after about 30 hours or so. I'm like, that's not a good thing!
I made it 20.
That is not how a game should
You held out
function.
longer than I did.
That would be like saying, oh, don't worry, the third stab gets better after the first 2.
And the thing is, people say it gets better once you get down onto the other planet.
Oh.
And yes, the hallways stop on the planet, but the side quests aren't really that fun, and they don't really make much sense. Like, okay, I have this giant stone thing. It's telling me to do something because it's a person who refused to fulfill their goal. But how do they know their goal? Because the whole point of this game is that the people who get branded by the fallacy don't know what their goal is, which is
do it or they
turn to stone. So you have these seed stones that tell you what to do. So what, when you turn to stone, you know what to do? Who designed this?
And I mean,
complicated things.
the thing too is, like, you look at that character base, and there are just so many characters that are either unlikable or just unmemorable.
Only half of the characters are good. I liked Snow because he is basically Kamina. And I liked Dodge, even though he was a bit stereotypical.
Yeah.
And I liked Fang because she was a badass.
And that was the thing, like, I like Snow, but they constantly kept trying to tell you, no, he's an asshole, because Lightning's the main character. Believe her. He's an, like, no, I like him, stop that!
Yeah. Like, I like Snow. He has a trench coat that's magic.
He has a motorcycle!
A motorcycle that's made out of, like, Shiva.
I didn't like Hope. Hope was whiny and
I started to like him better in 2 because they at least made him older and made him seem like he wasn't a whiny bitch every second of the game.
he got over everything.
Yeah.
Like, he was a better character in 2. But the thing is, I understand having your mother die right in front of you is bad, and that can traumatize you, but there are better ways to handle this plot-wise to make me like this character.
Or just not stay with, just be alongside a woman that tells you everything is bad every step of the way.
Yeah, they probably shouldn't have left Lightning.
Like, pair him with Vanille, because at least Vanille tries to smile once in a while.
Even though she's the lolly fan service character.
Yeah,
Which is still better than Lightning at that point.
Yes.
At least she has emotions.
And then with
She
Fang,
doesn't
like...
leave people to die.
Yeah.
And with Fang, like, she's just so, like, pushed to the side most of the time that you don't really get to enjoy her as much as I really wanted to.
Fang should have been a little bit more centric, I think, because she had a bigger role, and she knew what was going on, and if they allowed her to say what was going on, or, hey, here's an idea, Felsi, tell us what you want us to do. Because that is a very good idea, because how do you accomplish your goals if you do not tell us what to do?
It's like, story, give us, please.
Plot, details. I don't want to sit through a dictionary and figure out what these terms are.
So at least they made up for it by pushing Lightning away, making Hope slightly better, and giving us a Moogle to throw. That made it so much better. I swear to God, I spent like...
a game of ideas
That just
With-
work put together well.
that they didn't know how to put together, because it was almost like they were like, we're going to give you guys a brand new team that has all these great ideas, but they don't know how to put it together.
Yeah, yeah.
And none of them were really part of the original team, from what I recall.
Yeah.
Then again, working on like Final Fantasy 12 and 13 kind of broke the main guy making these games, unfortunately. So,
Kind of makes sense when you think about it now.
Yeah.
How those two turned out.
you know, if someone has a mental breakdown on a project, maybe it's a good idea to either take him off the project or make something new.
Give him a break.
Make another Xenogears
Give
or
him
a
a
sequel
Something
to
fun.
Chrono Cross sequel.
Oh,
no!
But like, but we made I Am Setsuna. It's kind of like Trigger. You remember Trigger? Yes. Why aren't we getting one of those though?
Like, Chrono Trigger and Chrono Cross are fantastic games. Why don't we have more of those? Like Xenosaga, no, not Xenosaga. Xenogears was originally supposed to be a Chrono Cross sequel, or Final Fantasy VII at the time, and yet we never got anything related to Chrono. So,
Well, Square's did not exactly been on the best of terms in the last decade or so.
speaking of which, next topic: Final Fantasy VII Remake, because I really want to discuss the highs and lows of this point. Now, when this was announced, I was giddy as a schoolgirl.
I think most people were.
Well, yeah, I'm pretty
Just
sure
because we never
everyone
thought
like
they'd make it.
died and
Like as soon
attended.
as they started showing everything, you could hear the E3 audience.
Oh yeah,
Yeah.
because
They
no one knew.
trolled us. They trolled us every
Yeah,
single
the year
E3.
before, it was terrible.
Like, the thing was, like, I truly believe that the only way it was ever going to get made was when they literally had nothing left. They were about to go for bankruptcy, and just that's their final, like, throw-in.
And, like, they troll us every single year. They're like, oh, it's never going to happen. It's announced.
And now they're like,
Well,
well, we gotta
I
do it
remember-
because we do need funds, or they'll never be able to finish Kingdom Hearts and all those other games.
See, that was also the thing when they did the compilation of Final Fantasy VII's release.
Mm-hmm.
They had an interview with Tetsuya Nomura in EGM at the time, and he said, I am way too swamped to worry about a remake. I would love to do one, but I am extremely busy with all these other games. Maybe after I do all of them, then I can get to the remake.
But that would mean they'd have to release Kingdom Hearts 3.
No, this was before they were
There's a
even
release
announced.
date to announce the
He
release
was
date.
still busy doing 2 other games. Like, I think he was working on 13 sequels.
Jeez, that goes way too long.
Tetsuya Nomura is highly overworked.
Yeah.
And he's getting up there.
It's unfortunate because like he has a lot of very good ideas and he just is not allowed to finish the products that he wants. The thing with the Final Fantasy VII Remake is I'm not one of the person who says don't change anything. You can change stuff.
Change is good.
Yeah.
Change, you know, as much as I love Final Fantasy VII, you know, shields up, there are problems
Yeah.
that you
Yeah.
can
Problem.
fix. And as a person who creates stuff on the internet, I know looking at stuff from the past, if you look at it, you're going to say, there are things that I could have done differently. There are things that I really would like to do with this series. And you know what? On a remake, I want to try that right now. And I think the fighting system change is a good idea.
Yes, I agree.
Depending on how they go
Yeah,
about
depending
it.
on how the switching up goes.
More towards Kingdom Hearts is good. Less towards 12, more towards Kingdom Hearts. 13 was a nice change. It was a nice change. It wasn't a bad mixture. I just think it gets because the fights were too long, that it kind of went out of proportion. What I would like more is like a highly action-oriented fighting system, somewhat akin to 15.
Yeah.
It kind of looks like it's going that way. Kind of resembles the way Versus is going.
Because, I mean, that was the problem that 13 really brought, was that it was more like, click, watch, wait, click, wait.
Well, I never did the auto fight. I actually chose my attacks. I mean, it's
I
more
tried to,
fast-paced.
but it still was like...
It's a strategic game when you paradigm shift.
Yes.
Because you really have to plan your paradigms and you really have to think about, okay, which thing will work? Because a lot of bosses do not go down unless you have the correct paradigms. In that sense, yes. But there are many bosses that are just bullet sponges in that game. In terms of Final Fantasy VII Remake, I would like to see the same plot. I would like to see updated graphics.
Oh, I don't want them to change, like, the core.
I don't want them to change the core essence. You know, I still want to see Cloud in a dress. I want them
Yeah,
to
please,
say
if they
same
censor that,
humor.
I'm going to be so
Oh,
upset.
he's sad.
Which, you know, they probably will do some censoring of that now.
I don't get why that's controversial. A guy can wear a dress.
I think it's more like the scene where the guys, like, glomp him in the,
That might need censoring.
Don Corneo is kind of
well,
a...
him too, maybe.
Yeah.
That'll be weird.
But don't worry, Tifa's boobs will still be huge. Like, don't worry about that. That won't get censored.
Yeah.
But, you know.
Weirdly.
What I would like to see changed, I want to see better translation. I want to. My big problem with Final Fantasy VII is my discs are scratched on the first game, so I have to work just to get the first one to work. You have to like open it up, close it, open it up, close it. Having something that doesn't do that would be an improvement. So I mean,
that's why I opted for the digital copy on the PS3,
Mhm.
just so that I could at least play it.
exactly. So having the technology we do now will improve the game in my experience. Anything that can improve something that is dated. And for all its good points, Final Fantasies 7 through 9 have been dated because the 3D era was very unkind to time. If you look at some of these games, you have trouble looking at them and playing them. What about you guys? What are some things that you would like to change or like to see stay the same?
The arms.
I don't know. I just want a bunch of this again.
Doing those squats.
I just want squats.
Squats for days.
I think the big thing though is I want, because I mean, assuming if they're making it in 3 separate games, so there should be a lot more. I want to be able to explore more, especially of Midgar. I want to be able to actually like go into places that we never did before, instead of just here's another road, here's another road. Oh, there's the bar, but here's another road.
I'm kind of the mentality, kind of like Hitman's going, where it's like, we're releasing it in chunks. I'm like, can you let me know when you're done?
Well, yeah, that's the thing. I don't know what everybody's plan on that is, but I am honestly not even remotely considering getting the game until it's finished, because I do not want to play that and wait like a year or however long it takes.
I can tell you why it's happening though. Behind the scenes at Square Enix, when they came into the PS4, they thought that console gaming was dead. They pushed towards mobile hard, and all their console titles are mobile-ified.
But $25.
They split up their experiences. It worked for Life is Strange because that was made with that in mind. However, they're doing that with everything, and I don't know how that's going to work for Final Fantasy VII. Are you going to have some parts be like, okay, this is the first disc as a full game? Is it going to be like just the first 10 hours? Like, I don't know how you do that.
If they did it right, like maybe if they split the first disc into 2 of those parts that they're trying to do, then that would be good, because I heard that they did want to make Midgar more explorable, and that's kind of why they're separating it, because it would take a lot more space to put all that extra stuff in there.
Because I mean, the way I figure is that the first part I feel like should end as you motorcycle out of Midgar.
Yes.
That'd be a great ending point.
The Midgar part,
It needs to be good clips and like
the adventure.
Yeah.
But what I would like to see happen is these games interact with each other as if they were one whole game. So you can go back to Midgar. Because if that doesn't happen, then it just doesn't have the same feel to me. I'm still going to play it. I'm still going to buy it, and obviously, I'm probably going to buy it sooner than most people, because I want to try to, put a word out on Twitter, because I do like to. If I don't have time to review a game, I just like to put, what I think on Twitter. We'll see how that works out.
It's definitely a game that I'm going to be very patient with, because I'm not. Because Square has burned me so much in the last 10 years, I really have to tread carefully when I'm doing anything with them now.
At least with Hitman, where if you wanted to get it early, they priced it as such.
Yeah.
Because they realized there's not much here. We're not going to charge full price unless you want the whole experience.
Yeah.
Cough, Capcom, cough. Street Fighter V.
Recently with Activision with the Marvel games, those re-releases, the $40 things for a 12-year-old game.
It all depends on the content.
Yeah.
Splitting things into parts, if it's something that's designed that way, such as, say, Tales of Monkey Island, that works. Final Fantasy VII, I'm very hesitant on, because I know it's going to be a well-made game, but I don't know if it's going to feel like it should not have been split.
I also worry too, because I almost want to, have they openly said what the pricing is? Because I could have sworn I heard they were going to, every part is a full price.
They did not.
The size of a full price game. I mean, the content-wise, but
that's what we're.
There's a lot of vagaries, because we don't know when each thing is going to be released. If it's all released at the same time, you know what? I'm good with that. Because that's exactly what Final Fantasy VII was, 3 discs.
And that's what I worry, though, is that they will, I almost feel like they're wanting to get, pre-orders and money then, so they can finish the other 2 parts. So I'm worried that we'll be sitting here playing through Midgar, and then we'll have to wait, a year, 2 years for the next one.
Or it's going to be a Asura's Wrath, where it's oh, you got to pay for the finale and DLC.
Jesus.
Yeah, my Asura's Wrath video is going to be coming out in a couple months, and...
What constitutes as a full-priced game is very varied. You can get something like The Witcher 3, which 172 hours, you still got shit to do, 100 plays, and then you got these shitty movie licenses games that are full-priced, which are 4 hours at most, and just cash grabs.
And then there are games that are $40 that I get more than a full price game out of.
Ratchet and Clank.
Ratchet and Clank, fantastic game.
Then there's a game you can get for like $10, like Rocket League, and you can just play that forever.
Or like stuff like Overwatch, where you can
Yep.
continue playing, and there's actually a fair amount of content there.
Next month.
Depends on what genres you like to
Yeah,
do.
but I mean, realistically, JRPGs have always been what I like to buy the most because I feel like I'll get the most out of hour-wise in terms of what I get. Like, I got Trails of Cold Steel for the Vita for $20, and I put 120 hours into that game and loved every second of it. That's more than getting your money's worth. Whereas getting a game like, say, like, I want to get Overwatch, but I can't assume that I'm going to play more than 10 to 20 hours without getting bored for $80. That's why JRPGs work. Like, you're always guaranteed to get as many hours as you pay dollars
You can
for.
pay significantly less
Yeah.
than everybody else.
Yeah. I'm very, very busy lately. This year has been the most because I work now a graveyard shift, and in my free time I am editing and trying to get History of One Piece out because people keep asking me when that is. But in my free time I try to get RPGs done, but most of my free time is spent playing games that I need to review. So unless I specifically have the time, I mean, I don't mind a game being shorter. But it has to justify the amount of time that I put in with characters that I like and a story that is worthwhile, or gameplay that engrosses me. For example, like Virtue's Last Reward or anything from the Zero Escape series, there's really not too much gameplay involved with that, but I have made the time to play through those games because the characters, the story, the atmosphere, Zero the Third, everything is fantastic. So if you can grab me in such a way that I will play your game, I will try to make the time.
One thing that bothers me, I don't know if that's probably worse than having a game that's too short, is a game that's too long and it just feels like a chore to play. That's what I felt with Darksiders 2. Or I'm one of the very, very few that felt that way about Shadow of Mordor. It just dragged on and it just felt like a chore to play.
From what I hear, I've only played a little bit of it because he owns the game and he lets me borrow it sometimes. I hear it's pretty good up until the final boss fight.
Oh yeah, it's a lazy quick time event. I just felt to me it felt like a subpar version of Batman Arkham games. The stealth is good, the combat is sluggish, and the story is kind of.
And it's repetitive gameplay.
Because that's the thing you got to worry about too with a lot of JRPGs can be really susceptible to it is just padding. So you just get like endless side quests, like a lot of fetch quests. Like, I mean, granted, like in games like Final Fantasy XIV, where MMOs like grinding and endless fetch quests, that's par for the course.
But games like Xenoblade and Xenoblade X, like I hear there's like thousands of hours you can put into the side quests alone, and I'm like, I'm going to get to them eventually, but I don't know if I'll have time to play all that.
Because I mean, sometimes you literally just want to get through a story, where other times, like, you love that world so much. Like 10, I played like 30 hours of Blitzball because that's how much fun that was to me.
I got that jack shot. Like, I wanted that, jack shot. But
I was such a cheater in that game.
Let's move on a little bit to the more modern stuff. Right now, Sony is pushing VR along with everyone. Now, AR and VR are relatively hard concepts. Like, AR has just gotten big because of Pokemon Go. VR isn't quite there yet in terms of price point and in terms of, like, not everyone has accepted it as this big new thing. But Final Fantasy has VR experience because the PSVR is being the new promoted thing. I am planning on picking up a PSVR, if only because certain things have started to grab me. Psychonauts has a VR game. There's this thing called Eagle Flight where one of the developers actually messaged me on Twitter and asked me to play it, so I'm going to check that out. But Final Fantasy VR experience. Thoughts?
I never even heard that one.
Thoughts?
I saw it. I laughed so hard, I was like, holy fucking shit.
Sydney dating sim.
I was like, oh my god, you would though.
Oh,
It's not even that, it's literally, it's your prize for beating it, which apparently is so clunky that it's not even worth it anyway.
I am going to try it out.
Yeah, just
You
give
love
it
to
a
spend
try,
money,
see how
don't
it
you?
goes.
Ray, I have money for days that I don't need.
Like, I feel like VR would be good with horror games more so.
See, that's the thing. One thing I've seen on Angry Joe's channel is that there was this horror game where like the maps are randomly generated.
Yeah, I saw that.
Yeah,
And,
that shit's scary.
like,
I don't want to touch that.
No, VR is hard though because you can't really understand
Yeah.
the experience
But, like,
unless
it also
you're
makes
playing.
you feel like you're there, because I have worn a VR mask before. Like, you don't see anything on your side, you're just there looking at the screen. So if it was a horror game, it probably would be as terrifying as people find it.
My big problem with VR right now is that I wear glasses.
Yes.
And I've heard from my good friend Johnny Maloney that sometimes they work with glasses, but it's hard to put them over.
Yeah.
So I'm a little bit hesitant, but at the same time, the things you can do with VR, there's so many possibilities because it's immersion.
Yeah.
VR idea is all about putting you in the game world better than ever before. So instead of just sitting on the couch, gotta beat the next boss.
It's a concept. It's kind of like
Yeah.
the next Wii thing that's doing,
Except
but they're
for Sony.
escalating it.
Is it worth $1,000?
The difference to me is this: the Wii and like the PlayStation Move were gimmick, and they did the opposite of what games have done for years. They tried to get me to get up. And I am very, very averse to getting up while playing games.
Some of them work.
So
like
you'll
the
like
ones with
you'll
the
like
pad.
Sony's better.
Well, that's why the PlayStation VR makes sense. It's cheaper. It's not demanding motion. It's just demanding
Just
here,
head movement.
watch.
Like, I think
and
the
get a
only
Well, no,
thing
Yes.
for them
really
it's
works
mostly
with Kinect.
the watch and your head movement.
Yeah.
And then your hand movements.
Mhm.
Other than that, you can sit on a couch or a computer chair.
And it works with my PS4. Like, I don't have to buy another thing. I can understand people aversion to it because if you do not have a PS4, that's $800
Yeah.
without the games.
Yeah.
And if, say, down the line,
Mhm.
we might run into this whole divide because of the fact that they're splitting consoles up because of the technology changing mid-cycle.
The thing is, I am so drooling at the mouth for Project Scorpion and the possibilities of the PS4.5 because
Neo.
have you heard some of these specs? Like,
They're pushing 4K video output, so
It's interesting.
I mean,
if you own that content and can afford that content, yeah, you're drooling.
Mm-hmm.
For, like, the average console
and
gamer.
it might boost
Yeah.
the VR capability,
Like, it
but
takes
not by
me so
much.
many years to get one console, and then they put out another one. It's like, stop, slow down.
The only difference is that
So
they're
that-
public about their changes now, because they've been slowly improving their consoles over the years.
mhm.
With a little better chipset, a little bit digital.
It's kind of like a PlayStation Slim in some ways.
Kind of, yeah.
The main problem, though, is because both companies realize that it's really expensive in 2016 to build something state-of-the-art, even if you were tech-savvy like they are. So when it came to both the Xbox One and PS4, when they first designed them, they went with the lowest common denominator, which was a specially custom-built AMD platform.
Mhm.
Jaguar. While it was new at the time, when they designed it, it was designed to be medium end. And even Forbes put this out, where when they released the consoles, they were at least 5 years behind compared to desktops. And so they
At
have
the
to,
same time,
that's why they're doing the mid-refresh, where they're updating the chipsets because they're realizing the games they want to do, they can only do on desktops, so they have to make the consoles more like desktops sooner rather than later.
which makes more sense. They're easier to develop for.
Yes. And
But
then that
then-
way they can go more than just a console.
The funny thing though is that we get all these bad PC ports
Yeah.
now, which wouldn't have happened years
Well,
ago.
at least with the 10 and 2 remasters, they didn't botch it horribly.
All right, so we got 15 minutes. Do we want to open up for like questions? So
Yes.
we don't brush over stuff that people want to hear.
We got a few things happening right now. So we're going to open the floor to questions, and before we get kicked out, we have the loot crates available.
Yeah, we'll get the last 5 minutes.
So we'll ask our questions, and if you can correctly answer them, then you will win the shiny loot crate. But
it's not that shiny.
It's shinier than I am.
Oh, you get the right spot in the glasses.
Well, yeah, I guess so. I do get that arcada glare in the lenses. But anyone, questions are open. Ask away.
What are your thoughts on the Dissidia Final Fantasy series?
The thing is, I loved the battle system, but I didn't care for the story because it was. I get what they were going for. They were like, okay, the goddess and the goddess of
that
light,
one was a little weird.
which was, you know, a concept that was kind of brought forth from the first Final Fantasy, like darkness and light at war, and then someone brings all of them together. But I never finished I finished the overall story, but I didn't get to the super special secret ending if you do all this stuff. I have Duodecim now, and I haven't played it, but the main draw for me was all these Final Fantasy characters can beat the crap out of each other.
Yeah.
So I was getting jacked, and I was beating the crap out of Titus, and it was the best thing ever.
I didn't like the individual arcs where you can get the little sub-stories to it, but the main story was just like, I'm lost.
Well, like,
The overall plot was, but the individual stories, yes, I liked.
Oh, yeah.
I mean, that was the thing. Like, you were literally getting, like, at that point, I think it was just the first 10 they started with, or did they go to 12?
With Duodecim, I think they
Because I
went
think
up
they
to.
expanded.
I think up to 13
Yeah.
actually.
Yeah.
So I think it was just up to 10
there
for
was
the
like
first one.
lightning,
Yeah, first one was-
Yes.
Luna.
Because, I mean, you're thinking about it, like, you're trying to fit in 10 different worlds into one game. You're not going to be able to make that cohesive, no matter how hard you try.
Yeah, like you have characters doing things that are really, really weird, and then some of the characters, like for villains, aren't the final villains. They're just the villains you know about.
It's also the fact of,
Yeah,
like, trying to believe that Kefka would work together with anyone.
Kefka would have destroyed all of them.
Yeah.
Ultimisia, I have a hard time believing she'd work with them because she's like busy planning to destroy time. Actually, if you look at the roster, most of them like to destroy time.
Yeah, the only annoying thing was is if you're playing a character that normally doesn't jump 20 feet in the air, and you're facing someone like Kefka who sits 20 feet in the air half the time, it's like,
Yeah, like
you
most of
kind
the
of have to like
villains
jump to try to hit him.
I've seen some of the like air juggling things, like Garland can air juggle people like crazy.
It's like,
so
I hate Cujo as a passive.
Cannon?
If you don't get to him in time, like he charges up that one power,
Oh, yeah.
or then he levitates, you're
Oh,
like, stop
God.
moving!
Cujo's
Roll it.
one of my favorite characters in general because I love how effeminate he is. So I just play him for days.
But I like how it like eventually ended. It showed like where Final Fantasy 1 started, like where the crystals actually come from,
Exactly.
and it shows you follow the Warrior of Light. It's like, oh, shit, I like this.
See, the thing is, Final Fantasy 1 has a lot of unofficial tie-ins to it. I would like to learn a little bit more, but Final Fantasy 1 in general is a confusing game.
Like I played the original way back, and then I played it again, and then I played all the remakes, and I was just like, yeah, this kind of makes like no sense, but it's just like it's like their first run at Final Fantasy.
It can't be as confusing as 13 somehow having to relate with Earth.
No. You don't understand it. As someone who has studied time travel religiously, just trying to figure this time loop out. No, I'm talking about Final
Lightning
Fantasy
Returns.
1. Like, that game makes no sense. Like, the fact that I'm Garland, and I'm going to be sent back to the past, and I'm going to take these 4 fiends, and I'm going to move them into the future. And yet, when you go back into the past and defeat these 4 fiends in the past, they still exist in the future. So,
Okay,
Yeah,
now
it
it
makes no
almost
sense.
seems like they're trying to pull off a Star Trek sort of storyline where there's some convoluted plot device that keeps them from disappearing from existence. Unlike Back to the Future, where no matter what, you'll disappear from existence if you screw with the time.
And then I looked at multiverse theory because I'm like, okay, maybe it's all a different universe. But wouldn't that not create a time loop?
Yeah,
Because
that would then screw things.
because that would just make another split and another split. You know,
Yeah.
it's the best time travel I can think of. Have you ever watched Dragon Ball Z?
Yeah.
The Cell Saga. That's multiverse theory right there, in effect.
They brought it back.
And
Super.
Yeah.
And it still it makes absolutely no sense in Super how, hey look, the future is still grim, still dark. We're recovering from the androids. But they were defeated many years ago, so that entire timeline would have been wiped out.
it's a separate timeline.
So apparently it's such a separate timeline that it still exists, even though Trunks can go back in time.
Yeah, the thing is, with multiverse theory, traveling to the past does not affect the timeline you came from. It takes a new timeline where that happened.
But how would he essentially go back to his own timeline after he...
It's not his own timeline. He's basically jumping universes. That's multiverse theory in a nutshell. It's like
I know, but they don't necessarily explain that in the...
yeah, they don't explain it in the show, but like that's the perfect example.
Yeah, they did.
Oh, they did?
Not in Super, though. They don't explain it.
I remember in Dragon Ball Z when Krillin asked him that question, he's like, how come you went back in time if it's not going to change multiverse theory? And you're like, but what you're thinking about when you change the past, like Back to the Future, that's dynamic timeline.
Yeah, no,
Yeah.
it's more
Or like
dynamic.
Game of Thrones, Hold the Door, that's called, that's a fixed timeline where going back in time creates the future that you know.
But none of that works in Final Fantasy 1.
Yay.
Any other questions? Yes.
Have you had the opportunity to look at the online games like 11 and 14?
I play 14 religiously.
So do I.
So I love it. I love the fact that they incorporate, much like Final Fantasy 9, every idea from Final Fantasy in some way. Like they have the job system, you can be any job you want. I love that because I spent hours cooking things in a game.
I was not impressed though. I had to start a class and then finally start the thief class just so I could be a ninja. I didn't like that.
I didn't mind that much because I haven't dual classed yet or anything. Like I wanted to make my own weapons, and so I started like the leatherwork stuff, and I started blacksmithing, and then I got to a certain level where I'm like, okay, where is this item? So I went on a journey around the world, and I found a whole bunch of stuff that I couldn't find anywhere else.
Have you seen the Fat Moogle? The new Fat Moogle they're bringing in now because everybody's more the Chocobo now. Oh my god. So cute.
So yeah, I love Final Fantasy 14. I think Realm Reborn fixed so much.
Yeah, did you play the original? Because I never even
No,
looked at it.
no, I didn't look at it, but I heard a lot of the problems. Like Marsco told me all about how bad it was. But
I mean, I put the free trial in for 14. I haven't gone since because I can't justify myself paying monthly still. That's still a tough pill for me to swallow.
That's why for me, the only MMO that I ended up coming back to was the free-to-play Star Trek Online.
I've heard good things about it.
all right,
No,
I
like,
think we
We still got like enough
8
time for
minutes.
one more question. before
One
we
more
end the credit.
question, and then we gotta do our thing.
Yeah.
And favorite character and favorite villain. Quick spot. How it seems to be.
Okay. Favorite character. This is hard. I really love Vivi. I think Vivi and his backstory is so great, and how existential it is because it's all about like figuring out like purpose and why he's here. And as a person who you know, growing up, this was very helpful for me. It's like, you know, you can be whoever you want to be, set your own path apart from everyone else, and I like that.
Villain?
Villain. I have to go with Kefka. Because
I thought you were going to say Kuja. That's shocking.
Kefka, well, Kuja's great because he's so effeminate and I love him. But Kefka destroys the world and remakes it.
He
in his
succeeds.
He's the only Final Fantasy villain to succeed in his plans before being killed, of course. But he wins.
He's also one of the few villains that you actually
He has
legitimately,
that
like, I am
moment
going to
of period.
destroy you when I get to you. Whereas everybody else, I'm like, okay, I'm going to get to you. Him, I'm like, no, now.
Like, Kefka doesn't
The
screw
poison.
around.
The poison, like, I was horrified even as a kid watching that.
And his theme
Dancing
So
Man.
good. Oh my god.
Oh, I thought you were gonna talk about the bump, 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 ba-na-na-na.
Well, like that.
That one I
is
loved
good.
too.
I like both.
Everything related to Kuja's themes, I'm just like he's so like both dark and funny and like I'm scared of him, but I love him at the same time. He's like the Joker, only slightly more fabulous.
Yeah. I guess.
That's a pretty high
He's
word.
still a lot more terrifying.
Yeah.
Like the voice
Which
actor
Joker
from
you got,
Dissidia
right?
was amazing.
I'm talking about John DiMaggio.
His voice acting.
Alright, favorite character, even though there are a lot of them, hands down would be Orin. Because I love how he's such a badass. He's quiet, and he's kind of ambiguous. You kind of think like maybe he might not be a good guy, but he is a good guy. I love how he's kind of like a mentor for Titus and that kind of thing. But yes, Orin, favorite character. Favorite villain, I think, would have to be Garland from 9. I mean, like he kind of came out of nowhere, I think, in a lot of ways. But yeah, he would be my favorite.
Favorite character? Vanille. No. No, Riku, just because, like, Ten is my personal favorite, and Tara Strong is such an amazing actor, and back then I was, like, especially during that time where I'm, like, right in the middle of high school, where for some people it is probably your worst experience, I was extremely depressed, and to play a game like that where Riku is literally the bubbliest thing I'd ever seen at that point, because I wasn't, like, familiar with, like, cheesy anime at that point, so I wasn't overly exposed to that level of bubbly. But for Riku, like, I have never wanted to hug a video game character more than Riku in the Thunder Plains. And then villain, it has to be Kafka. Like, it's not even a question.
Public was that from?
Yeah.
Like, there are others that are still really good. Like, I still think that Seymour is such a great,
Oh,
like,
God.
like come back to and, like, just piss me off villain.
Yes.
He's annoying as shit in that game.
If they
And
had
that's
only
why he's a
sent
good
him,
villain. He
But
does
he's
his
not.
job.
Hey.
I liked the fights with Seymour so
Yeah.
much, and I think an honorable mention to Kuja because he was a very complex character as well. But anyway, I think it's time to
We got
get
a few minutes.
We got a few minutes.
Who wants free shit?
Our first question is, we mentioned that there are a rarity about the amount of games that have direct sequels in the main Final Fantasy line. Can you name how many direct sequels there are in the main Final Fantasy?
How many games had direct?
How many games have direct sequels?
3.
2.
Do prequels count?
Prequels do not count.
17.
That is correct. 5. Final Fantasy IV, the After Years. You have Dirge of Cerberus. You have 10-2. You have 12 with Revenant Wings.
Which no one remembers.
No one remembers. And you have 13 with 2.
LR.
So
I guess you're the winner then.
That was it? One question?
Well, yeah.
We only had 3 minutes.
Well, I mean, we have another one
We
too.
could make a 30-minute show, but that would be
So-
less time to make a
Yay,
joke
you
about
are.
Sydney.
won! Thank you.
We have one more question, one more loot crate, and
So Ray, ask us the question.
yes, I will.
What's in the box?
What's in the box?
What's the box?
Do you want to know what's in the box? Or
No, I
Well,
want to.
that's
I
the
want to know how
surprise
to
of
get
the
burned.
box.
All right. So, who said? Which character? And this can be from any Final Fantasy game. Said this quote here. It is not right and wrong that separates us from our enemies. It is our standpoints, our perspectives that separate us.
Orin?
Nope.
I don't know.
I want to say that.
We're gonna have this for a while.
We might have to give him a hint.
Yeah.
All right, a hint. All right. Well, it's from Final Fantasy VIII.
Oh shit. Can you say it again?
That doesn't help me at all.
Can you say the line again?
that one.
You got a hand up there.
Except for-
Oh, a hand.
Sid? No.
Headmaster Sid would have been a good guest though for that.
Can you say the line again?
Renoa?
You read the line.
The line is, "It is not right and wrong that separates us from our enemies. It is our standpoints, our perspectives that separate us."
Yes, deference.
Or was it Laguna?
We do have a backup question if no one knows.
Yeah.
Do we have a backup?
I have a backup.
I know
Yes,
this, but
we
I
do.
don't remember the line.
I don't remember the character.
Yeah.
Alright, then let's ask a backup question.
Okay, backup
So what was
question.
the answer, Ray?
The answer was Squall. Leon.
He said words that wasn't whatever.
I thought his dialogue was ... and standing against the
It
wall.
might have been like right at the end or something.
Yeah.
I like his face palm.
Well, if you believe the theories, he was actually dead, so it doesn't count.
Oh.
But
Yeah, I
I
have seen
don't
that series.
the backup that I have is in Final Fantasy X there were a ton of celestial weapons. Can anybody name me Titus's celestial weapon? Yep.
I haven't played that.
Come on, get your prize.
I watched the playthrough of it. It was beautiful.
I haven't seen all of those.
Well, that is our show for tonight. Thank you
Thanks
all for
all
coming out
bunch.
and sticking to the end and for fanboying and fangirling with us. You know, we enjoy Final Fantasy. We're going to probably try to do this again next year, hopefully at a better time
And
slot.
hopefully with
Yeah.
something positive to say about 15 in September.
Yeah, let's hope. Oh my god.